This is TWiT.
I put this in because of you, Brianna. You've been cyber-stalked.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah. A little bit.
Actually, I have as well. Who hasn't?
Your wife has.
Anybody in public, in the public eye these days.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court, in a 7-2 decision, ruled that if you're going to accuse somebody of cyber-stalking, you have to consider whether they knew what they were saying was a threat, not what you felt.
Which is horrible because crazy people don't know.
That's right.
That's why they're crazy.
The case was Counterman versus Colorado. A guy who was convicted. Colorado has an anti-stalking law after he sent a barrage of threatening Facebook messages to a woman on Facebook that he'd never met.
Yeah.
The Colorado law just said, hey, if the recipient of the messages is, or any reasonable person feels distress, that's against the law.
Yeah.
They convicted him. Counterman appealed, arguing his statements were protected by the First Amendment and did not constitute true threats. So true threats are outside the First Amendment. So in fact, by the way, stalkers know this. If they said, I'm going to strangle you tomorrow, I can go after them. That's a true threat of bodily harm, right? You know this. I'm sure you've talked to the police department. And then they'll go after them. But if you say,
you should be strangled,
or here's your home address, it'd be a shame if somebody were to cause some harm. Is that a true threat? So Counterman said that wasn't my intention to threaten the person. Supreme Court agreed.
Yeah.
This is the majority opinion. Justice Elena Kagan wrote, the state prosecuted Counterman in accordance with an objective standard and did not have to show any awareness on Counterman's part of his statements threatening character. That is a violation of the First Amendment. So if a nut job doesn't know that a chainsaw would dismember you, they're off the hook.
Yeah.
The problem is, how do you know? How can you prove the intent?
I've got to say,
I
I do wonder what would happen if this case had involved somebody, say, I don't know, doxing a Supreme Court member and members of their family.
Exactly.
And actually, the only dissent came from Amy Comey Barrett and Clarence Thomas, both of whom I'm sure have had people at their front door. They agree that the impact on victims of harassment and stalking could be severe.
You're putting the abuser in charge of the process. Just like, I just genuinely believe that doing this.
This is the opposite of stand your ground. All the stand your ground laws are saying if you feel a threat, you feel
that's
a threat.
good point.
You can
act. Kill someone.
This is now saying it doesn't matter about you. It's what do they intend to do.
So you should say, come to Florida and meet me.
Right.
We'll have a conversation.
You're both in the right now. Great.
I would say, and I think you'll agree, but I won't put words in your mouth. Certainly, most of the threats I see are spurious. Like the person's trying to scare you, but isn't really intending. We have had those. Somebody came to Lisa's front door. I mean, person was obviously mentally ill, but that's who you're worried about, right?
So
you've had it worse than anyone on the panel.
I think, look, this is a very nuanced, difficult thing, and let's not pretend it's not difficult to balance. Freedom of speech, which we all believe in, with the right to basically exist in America without these kinds of threats coming to your door. That said, Marianne Franks is a good friend of mine. She's quoted in this piece. I really trust her judgment on that. She's worked in this space for a really long time. And something she talks about a lot is the people that do this have gotten very, very good at wrapping their comments up
exactly how.
in that little layer of irony. So it makes you scared. It gets the message across, but it's just plausible enough for them to have deniability.
It's what the mafia's done for years. It would be a shame if for some reason your front window were to get broken.
The other thing I would say is, I'll just tell a very quick story. Back during the height of Gamergate, I gave a talk at a college, and this kid raises his hand and identifies himself as a Gamergater and makes an obnoxious comment to a room full of 300 people. Whatever, I handled him. I'm a pro. It doesn't bother me. This is why this is important. After this, it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I'm there with a female member of the faculty that invited me to speak at this college, and this kid who is, like he's following us to our car.
Oh my God.
Just going and being like, Gamergate this, Gamergate that, y'all don't understand, and being so aggressive. And this kid, I don't think he was a bad person. My point is he had no understanding that following two women to their car at 11 o'clock at night was something that made us extremely uncomfortable.
It was just free speech.
It was him trying to get his opinion out there. So by that standard, he didn't know that what he was doing was threatening. And I think that's a lot of these people that are a little bit unhinged. I think they are truly tuned out from what the consequences are of how their behavior affects others.
Difficult.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
It is a difficult issue.
And of course, in this case, probably there wasn't cause for prosecution. Right?
Exactly.
Even though it is absolutely threatening and terrifying.
It was uncomfortable, but if you're looking at intent, it's not a perfect way to look at this situation.
Well, you can't, because there is no good way to look at intent.
Right.
You have no visibility into someone's frame of mind when they did what they did.
Yeah.
Right.
Unfortunately, I mean, as it turns out all too tragically in too many of these cases, the police only decide to act when somebody gets injured or killed. And it's how you balance that. I don't know, this is probably why I'm not a Supreme Court judge. But
but that was the dissent. The dissent brought that up. This is problematic for restraining orders and domestic violence cases.
But they're getting far too smart about it.
If my intent is just to scare you, is that sufficient to prosecute? I don't know. It shouldn't be allowed.
It's kind of like if you deliberately set out to scare someone walking down the street. You think, right, I'm going to jump out, with a mask on and scare them, or I'm going to jump out with a carving knife and I may or may not stab them.
That's the problem.
Death.
And then it's too late. Once you find out what the real intent is, unfortunately, we found out and it's too late.
Yeah.
This episode of Tech Break is brought to you by ACI Learning. The days of boring training methods are over. Meaningful impact shows up as high engagement, which translates to optimal performance. Your team deserves to feel entertained and empowered to keep your organization secure. Fill out the form at go.acilearning.com/twit for information on a free 2-week trial for your team.